Our next session is C-Suite Culture. Do you know how to read the room? Please welcome our moderator, President and CEO of the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Monica Villalobos.
Buenos dias, reinas. Good morning, queens. And I think we have some kings that support our queens out there, right? Yeah. Few of them as well. Thank you so much for being here. This is exciting. Again, my name is Monica Villalobos, and I serve as President and CEO of your Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And to echo Marisa's comments, I just want to say, please remember, as you go through this process, you're going to be learning so much during this summit. Remember three things. You are powerful. You are worthy, and you're going to make a difference, because you come from greatness. And so remember that as you think of those women who came before us, whether it's in your family or in your companies, remember that we are here with purpose. And that now falls to you to make that difference. And seeing more of us is so important. Oftentimes, we can lament the statistics, right? The fact that Latinas are making 54 cents on the dollar in their careers. That in their careers, they will lose over $1 million. But you know what? We're here, and we're going to change that, right? Big round of applause for all of you, please. Speaking of queens, I have two very powerful women to introduce you to. I am so excited to share the stage with them because they've already made a big difference and they've opened the door for us. And all we have to do is walk through it. So first, please welcome Fabiola Torres, who is Chief Marketing Officer and Senior Vice President of Energy Drinks at PepsiCo. Good to see you. She's coming with a lot of energy, so we're gonna get hyped up, right? Also, please welcome Alice Rodrigo, retired executive from JPMorgan Chase and also co-owner of KMI. Thank you, ladies. Have a seat, please. So everyone's dying to know, how did you do it? How did you get there? Can you share with us just a brief synopsis of your career and how you got there? I know it's hard to be brief because there's a lot attached to it, but we're going to get into that a little bit. So Fabiola, can you share with us a little bit about your career, maybe the different roles that you had?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Mexicana, born and raised in Mexico. I started a long time ago, I would say, but it's been quite a journey. I spent almost 20 years of my career at Nike, and Nike family here. Started Nike Mexico is creative roles, brand management, marketing director of the marketplace. Moved to Latin American roles, then global roles, different parts of the world, and Beaverton, Oregon, of course. Then I moved to Apple as the head of marketing for Beats by Dre. And you know, transition is not easy. You know, when we talk about our journeys and even moving within the company is never easy. It's always good to find a sponsor, a mentor, a family within the company, just to get a support system. And it's super important to get it there, wherever you go, which company you are, and find your way in, and find your spot. And then almost 3 years ago, I got an invitation from PepsiCo to join the company as the head of marketing for the energy portfolio, and recently as the head of the Hispanic business unit for Beverages. So thank you for having us here. I'm missing a few members of the family, Gatorade, energy drinks, and others. But super fun ride, and very excited to be here. And I said, like, hey, how did you do it? I think we're still doing it, right? So it's a never-ending journey, and I think when we think we're done is when you're over. That's my my mantra. And I think it's every year, every day, you have to show up and be present and feel young and feel energized to do it differently, to do it better every day.
Right. And you said something so important, and that's have fun, right? It doesn't have to be, it's going to be hard regardless, right? But it can be fun too. And I know that's something that I say to my team, as long as we're having fun, we're going to be here. It's going to be hard, but we're going to do it together. And it's okay to enjoy a little success, right? Alice, tell us a little bit about the different roles that you've had.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, and happy International Women's Day tomorrow. I think this is fitting that we're having this conference here on the heels of that. I was raised by a very strong Mexican mother that just understood how to overcome adversity, and even though she came to this country at a very young age with, at most, a 6th grade education, you would never know that because she just always held herself in a very, high regard and was not going to get pushed around. So that was my role model, and that's what I saw. And so when I joined JPMorgan, and I was there for 35 years, I started out in the commercial loan ops area. And just like Fabi said, I think that the key to navigating was to identify people that you wanted to really have around you and that were going to be your truth tellers. Not the things you want to hear all the time, but the real truth. That was important. And the mentors and the sponsors that I had really helped me to understand how critical it was to move laterally, to move into areas that maybe I didn't have as much experience in. And every time I did, I started out with commercial loan ops, but then I went to the consumer bank. I spent a lot of years there. Then I went to the business bank. From the business bank, I moved out of Texas to California and then back and managed our wealth teams. And all of those jobs were client-facing, and they were leading large teams. And every time I moved, obviously I was a little uncomfortable because you're starting to have to learn a whole new business and obviously build new relationships, have a new boss, et cetera, et cetera. But every time I did it, I felt like I was getting stronger and I was putting more things in my toolbox. And, it is a never-ending, process because, you finally get to a point like I did where, a lot of the people that are working for you, I could be their mother. They were the age of my children. But they brought such a different lens, and I really came to appreciate how critical that was to have the best talent. It didn't matter, what gender, what ethnicity, like you wanted the best people around you, and you wanted people that were going to be able to challenge you. And so the last few roles that I had at JPMorgan were actually on more of the product side, which, I had never really done. I had always been on the client side. And I wouldn't have traded those experiences for the world because, again, I just learned so much from people who had the expertise in product and marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like it has really positioned me to be able to do even more things in the future.
Right. Now that's fantastic. And our mothers, our role models, right, make such a difference. And learning from them, I always say my mother is still my best and favorite mentor, right? Because I'll explain some complex system to her and what I'm going through and this problem, and she'll be like, why don't you just do this? Oh, okay, Mommy, that's a good idea. And then I go and I take credit for it, right? So it works out beautifully. As you think about your careers and as we have this discussion, I want it to be very free-flowing. At what point did you know that you wanted to be in the C-suite? At what point, or did you? Was there kind of a point where you said, I am going to be purposeful about this path? And I ask because I think for most that I've talked to, it's been a little accidental, right? It's been a little like, oh, I was doing the work and then somebody recognized me for it. So tell me a little bit about your journey. What was that path to that C-suite and how purposeful was it?
You want me to go?
Either one.
For me, I'm always been a dreamer. I'm very ambitious, and I think since the moment I started working for big company, I said, I want to be that person. I want to be that C-suite person, and I know I have to do I have to make some sacrifices. I have to do different things in my career, but I was willing to do it young enough. Mm-hmm. And I started my career at the beer industry at Heineken, and it was just male. I was only 2 women in the marketing department, and 2 admins and myself. And I wasn't an admin, and I said, like, I want to be there. I want to have a seat on the table. And as the career progressed, I knew that I had more obstacles or more challenges or more preparation or more things that I needed to work on as you polish yourself to get there. So it's kind of always on training, as I keep telling my own kids and myself, you're always on training. Mm-hmm. And I think to get there is, even when you get there, is just how do you continue improving yourself and getting younger in mind and on heart to be able to train younger generation, because it's for me, it's about the legacy that you leave.
Right. Excellent. Alice?
I probably fall in the camp of more it was accidental, to be candid. And I think for me, it came when I made a move to California. So if I take everybody back to the 2008 financial crisis, it was really, really a tough time, obviously, in the country and financial services. And I had my boss call me one day and say, look, we're going to have to make a lot of changes here. And at the time, I was running the consumer bank in Texas. And he said, look, we have 8 people doing that job. We're going to collapse that to 4, and you're not going to be one of them. And that's kind of like all I heard, you're not going to be one of them. Right. But what we want you to do instead is, we've acquired a bank, Washington Mutual. We want you to move to California, and we want you to start a business banking division there, because they weren't really there. And obviously I was really disappointed, because even though this was a new job and a new opportunity, you always have this like, well, why wasn't I one of the 4 that was going to stay in that same job? And, it was a very difficult time back then, so I quickly, got over the shock a little bit and took the job. And I'll never forget that, like 6 months, in the future, right, just forward 6 months, I was having my mid-year review with my boss, and he said, I have to be honest with you, Alice, like, I didn't know how you were really going to react to this in this new job. And he goes, I've been pleasantly surprised that, like, you got here January 1st, and it was like you had been in business banking forever. Like, you knew everything about the marketplace, you knew where we should start focusing, you knew how to, calm the fears of the employees, because, again, for those of you that were around during that time, it was very scary, especially for a bank that we acquired, that many of their employees lost their 401ks, and people were obviously in a very different state. And he said, like, you never seem to get flustered. You are navigating through the chaos pretty well. And not only that, right, you're staying very focused on the business. So it's one of those things that I felt like those were kind of natural skills that I had, but he was really pointing them out to me in a way that I thought to myself, for the first time, like, I could do more than just this. I could do something more national in nature, and I could really help the firm to bring, together people and encourage them, right, to move in their careers, because that's what we really needed, right? We needed people that were willing to take some risk and take other opportunities on.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wonderful. And you mentioned, Fabi, your kids as well. And I always talk about my children. I have 2 boys who are very 11 and very 13. Like, not a little bit, but a lot. And I think our motivations sometimes can be different, right? We're motivated by different things, and it's not just ambition, but it's that our children see that. And I always say, I want my boys to be able to love strong women because they were raised by one. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that you all really exemplify, right? Being able, not just for our children, but also the next generation, that it's possible. And that's a huge privilege and a huge responsibility, right? Let's talk a little bit about, you make it, you get there, and you're in the C-suite. Did you find a difference in the culture with your peers, moving from maybe senior leadership to meeting regularly in that C-suite? Was that different? Was it the same? Did you find yourself modifying your behaviors in any way? Alice, what do you think?
You know, there were some similarities, but obviously at that level, you know, you're very focused on, you know, strategy. You're thinking about the culture that you want for the organization and the people. It's still extremely competitive. And, you know, my peers aren't always willing to share what they're doing. So you have to think about, you know, techniques that you can use to really build some of those relationships. And, you know, I always felt like there were times when, you know, you want to be part of the club, so to speak, and you might find yourself like, well, should I agree with Fabi on that issue? I'm not really sure that I would do that, but I want Fabi to like me and I want to be part of the club. But I quickly realized that, no, you're here so that you can push that status quo. So if I didn't, you know, agree with what my peer was doing and thought that it was going to impact, you know, the larger organization in a way, you know, I knew it was my responsibility to push back. And that doesn't always feel comfortable, right? Because you're getting like 12 blank stares, like, who does she think she is? She just got here.
Right.
But over time, you really gain people's respect, you know, when you do that.
Yeah. Very, very important to think about that, because you are there to push back on the status quo, right? You're not there to just go along. You're there because you have a diversity of perspective. And that's almost the responsibility and the job. But it's very easy because I think Hispanic culture can also be a very pleasing culture, right? And we want to be humilde and we want to defer. And so building those skills is really important. What about your experience, Fabi?
I think I find myself still modifying behaviors consciously or unconsciously. And I think it depends on who is in that table at that time, because one thing that happens at corporate America usually is change, right? You find yourself getting comfortable in the room. What you were saying, Alice, is that being part of the club, and then that club changes, or you change. So it is important, as I have navigated in the last two companies at the C-level roles, is how you read the room first, how you make sure that you understand who is in that room, how you actually behave to make authentically you. For me, that's important. I have not changed. If you know me for a long, long time, I have not changed. I'm still Fabiola Torres, who came from Mexico and had a lot of fun doing what I do. So I try to show up that way and respectfully on who is in that room, especially because the cultures of the companies that I have worked with are very different. But I want to make sure that I show up the way that I am, personally and professionally. But I understand who is in that room to make sure that I behave the way that the room behaves, but showing authentically me, if I have to say it that way. And it's just, I always put like the EQ and IQ together, and the balance of how you show up every time. It depends on when you have some business results, some things that is all about business. Sometimes when there's some other things, organizational changes, talking about people, and it's when you have to show up your EQ, more balance, and then your personality when it comes to the play. So it's just, it definitely has evolved the way that I have show up. And then when you bring yourself down as well to your team and saying more, this is my family, this is a team, this is the way that you have to interpret and filter some information. Because I think what happens as well, and I think I relate to what Alice was saying in terms of, hey, there's some certain levels of information that is managed as well. And then how you filter it down, how you actually use your own criteria on getting some information to your team, not all the information because it's confidential, or the other one is how much they can digest from that level.
And so what I'm hearing is that it's not just about building new skills, but it's about leveraging your strengths, right? Bringing those to the marketplace and lifting those up within you to add to that dynamic, right? And so we're not looking to lessen ourselves, but rather to leverage our strengths. And I think that is so incredibly important. Did you find yourself having to peel back on any behaviors? And I ask because one of my mentors once said, let go of the things that don't serve you anymore. And you always have to take an inventory. I jest that, you can take the girl out of East LA, but you can't take the East LA out of the girl. And so in my corporate interactions, my reaction is always to swing first, right? Just make sure you get in there, swing first. And I've had to dial that down a little bit because it doesn't serve me well, right? Being able to take. So are there any behaviors that you think you've had to kind of just dial down, not reduce your authenticity, but understand that you're evolving and that women have that beautiful ability to be so flexible? Alice?
I call that, Monica, like taking all of the Latina passion and using it constructively.
That sounds so much more diplomatic than what I've done, but thank you.
No, because it's true, and sometimes that's stereotypical too, right? But I do think that at least, many of my Latina colleagues and friends, we just have so passion and we like to use our hands and we're kind of going on. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, you've really lost the audience. And so one of the things that I really practiced was like really listening first, like not just like, you're talking to me and I'm hearing you. I mean, I really wanted to understand what someone's position was. Mm-hmm. So then that allowed me to think about, okay, now how do you use your passion in a way that is going to be constructive, but yet it's a part of me. And I want to make sure they know that that particular topic is critical to get right. Mm-hmm. And, I sit on the board of a utility company in Dallas, and, I'm the only Latina on the board. There's only 2 women on the board. Most of the board members are white males over 70. And so there was a particular topic we were talking about, and I had to be channeling that, what I just told you guys in myself, because I was like, I can't believe you just said that, But then I just said what I needed to say, and I felt like it was very tempered, and they were all a little taken aback, and I thought, oh my God, can you imagine if I had really come full-blown passion? we might have been calling 911 in there, I don't know.
That would have been fun.
Yes.
Right. I love it. Fabi, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely dial back because I want to.
Are you sensing a theme here?
Yeah, I always, as a Latina, I always want to say what I think. It's just it just comes naturally. So the thing is, I think my best partner in crime became Zoom, to be honest. It's during the pandemic, and I was hired at PepsiCo during the pandemic. So I heard in the room somebody saying, and I was trying to just raise my hand and say something, and then the Zoom was not working, so it helped me. It really helped me to stay back. And I kind of learned my way to say, do they really want to hear what I think? And especially for someone that it was new in the company and had very, very different point of view from others. And I found myself, and we were talking about reading the room, at PepsiCo as well as Nike, you find your leaders being 15, 17, 18, 19, 25 years in the company around you, and I was here for a month, no? Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of think about myself, and am I really adding value to that mm-hmm. point? Am I really doing things to my own favor by saying what I'm gonna say? And then through time, you find yourself and saying, you know what? Yes, I'm going to raise my hand, but I'm going to play a balance a little bit of not always saying what I think unless I'm in a more, I would say, safe environment and small environment where I can share thoughts. But definitely not all the way back, but really read the room and making sure that you add value and you kind of listen. first before you talk, but definitely I'm still working on that.
I think we all are. I found myself really working on my poker face, right?
Yes.
Because usually, todo se me ve en la cara, right? So like somebody would say something and I'm like, and I'd get this big crevice right down my face, right? I've had that since birth. And so now I have to like focus on relaxing. I have that little roller, so it doesn't look quite as aggressive as I am. But Alice, you mentioned something really important. One of your bosses, when you got into that role, said he was pleasantly surprised. That feels like a microaggression to me. Was that not the expectation when he saw what your talents and your capabilities were? So let's talk a little bit about stereotypes and microaggressions. I know I've heard a lot in my career. I'm wondering if you have as well.
Yeah, it was interesting because, he literally said, and by the way, this was a boss I learned a lot from. I really did. He's one of the ones I put on my list that was critical to my career. But he said, his exact words were, I was pretty sure you were going to have sour grapes, because I knew how much you loved that other job, and da-da-da. And I remember thinking, like, okay, he obviously has this thing in his head that whether it's a woman or a Latina, you're going to be all mopey, like, oh my God, I didn't get my job. It's like, no, this is an awesome job too. And I even said to him, well, what did you expect me to do? Like, how am I supposed to run this business if I don't know anything about the market or whatever? Of course I'm going to do my research. Of course I'm going to be prepared. But it just, I don't know. I had to tell him, and I've told, we don't have enough time today, Monica, to tell you all the stories I've had over 35 years. But I really have had to tell, some of the people in the organization, like, you can talk to me just like you would talk to anybody else who works for you, and I promise you, I will not cry. I promise you I'm not going to break down. I promise you, because there is this bias, and I always felt like, maybe like Fabi's saying, we just can't help ourselves. You just like say it out loud, like, talk to me normal, and what you see is what you're going to get.
I feel like we should put that on a t-shirt, right? Hashtag talk to me normal. I love it. Fabi, what about you?
Well, it has happened several times. I think when I look very Latina, so it's just like, hey, when I was invited to global roles, like why a Latina is going to do global, because you know your countries or you know your backgrounds, but you don't understand Asian culture, European culture, or even when I first got to the US, American culture. I think is, I would just invite you to make sure that nobody puts a label on you because it's wrong. And the way you look is not the way that you know and you have the knowledge and your learning ability or your background in terms of cultural differences. And I think we're more sensitive, I would say, than a lot of different cultures. And that helps you to be on a sponge. And I think that's the beauty of what I proved. And I said, like, no, I mean, I can do Asian, I can do European. I even loved it because I know my culture and I can learn or I can add value to others. That's one thing. And the other, I think when it comes to being a woman, I experienced something similar, like Alice, is that, hey, they think that you're going to react a certain way. And the feedback from my manager during that time, and it was tough times at Nike, he said, I would never imagine that you were going to be so resilient and so like forward thinking and next. And I said, why not? Right?
Did you tell him, I have children, right?
Well, during that time I didn't.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was so interesting because it was like a really good way to say, like, that means we're all very emotional. That means they cannot even get us tough jobs or tough decision-making things or process because the way that they expect we're going to react. So it was a good thing because I learned a lot, and that was one of my mentors through time, but it was kind of not great to see that he was expecting the opposite.
Right.
What's kind of weird is that when you think about the characteristics that many Latinas have, you would probably say many women have, right? are the characteristics that are so important when you're going to problem solve and you're going to deal through chaos, and you're going to, kind of like you said, Monica, like when you have a Latino family, and I mean, when I tell people I have 51 first cousins, they freak out. I'm like, oh, you have no idea how to manage all that. So I just started to think about all the characteristics of a good leader and a good, CEO. And the reality is that Latinas have it, but yet it gets pigeonholed into these other things. It's a little crazy.
Yeah, and I think that those low expectations are what kill the spirit. And it's a reminder that we have to have higher expectations of ourselves, right?
Yes.
And so that's important. We've just got a little bit of time left. What is your 30-second message to the next generation of Latina leaders? Fabi?
Be present, be ambitious, challenge yourself before others challenge you. Make sure that you get a support system around you, above you, below you, and you do the same for the next generation. It's just like, it's an ongoing process, an ongoing training. As I said, we're always on training. If you want to grow, you're going to get there, but you have to set up your goals and you have to be ambitious, because if you don't have an end goal far out, you're not going to get there. So it's just going to be small things that you achieve if you really want to get to this level. And it's always about training yourself and continue push yourself to be perceived in a different way.
I love it. Alice?
I think what I would add, those were all great, by the way, is just stay authentic. Be yourself. Do not change who you are at all. Continue to take risk. And as you think about, people that you want in your inner circle, whether you call that a mentor or, just a sounding board, try to also pick people that aren't like you, because you'll get so much insight on how to read the room, like Fabi said, things that you maybe wouldn't have thought about. I think that is, crucial. And then, finally, be sure you take that, passion and use it in a constructive way.
Channel
it, yes.
Right. Very diplomatic. Thank you very much. All really important points. I think at this time we're going to take some questions from the audience. I know you all have burning questions, so our SETA team is around the room with these lights. We cannot actually see anything, so just start talking, and we'll try to, find you in the room. What do we have?
I'm Caitlin and I'm from Nike, and just the question that I have is in regards to the comments and the almost backhanded compliments that you get sometimes. Do you guys have like a method or a process that you go through to kind of answer those comments and stand up for yourself, but also in that diplomatic way? Do you have any tips for others?
I mean, I think what I would say is you can always, in a very constructive way, remind that person of all the things that you've already accomplished and that you're really good at. That tends to diffuse it, and they kind of, realize right away that maybe that didn't come across the way they meant it. And then second, don't spend any energy on it after that. Seriously, it's wasted energy. You should put your energy on really the next thing that you have to focus on. Because I just think that if I go back to my younger self and the amount of time I just kept thinking about, well, why did Monica say that? It was like not worth it. So just let it go after that.
And I think the other thing is, it's a teaching opportunity. Take a moment to actively listen to what they're saying, because it's coming from a misconception. And while it's not your responsibility to teach them, it's a much better response than being defensive, right? I can remember very early on in my career, people would say, "You don't look Hispanic." And I would be very indignant and say, "Thank you, my white skin is a painful reminder of the raping and pillaging of my people." That was probably a little too much. So now I like to respond and say, tell me about that. Tell me what Latinos look like. Did you know that you could be Latino Asian, Latino Black, Latino, American Indian. And so it becomes a teaching opportunity, but it took me a long time to soften that one a little bit.
The way that I respond is, you don't look Latina, Fabian. I say, yes, I'm a tall Mexican. So
I love it. I love it.
No, just 100% agree with Alice. It's just, I think, take a breath, listen, and then throw it away once you learn from it. That's it.
Okay. I'm Hema from Chevron, and I have a question for you both. Do you have an example of a mistake you've made that you have learned a lot that you can share with us?
Go ahead, Alice.
I probably, like, the biggest mistake I've made is the hiring of people that weren't really ready for a job. And I felt like, I knew it, but in the name of really wanting to make sure, there was good diverse representation on the group, I went ahead and took a chance, even though it was more of a stretch than, and I kind of realized it at the time, but I thought, oh, it'll work itself out. And I felt like, I ended up obviously letting down that person, letting down the bigger team, because it affects everybody when you have a bad hire. And then, just realizing that, you just got to go with your gut. And ultimately, you've got to ensure that the individual that you're hiring for whatever role is the best person for the job and has all of the skills that they need to in order to help accomplish what you're needing to have accomplished.
For me, it was a project, and when a project is not that successful, and they give you feedback about it, and I didn't take it well, and I said, no, it was successful because of this, it was successful, like trying to save things. And I think what I realized when I look back and said, like, hey, take the feedback, learn from it, really make sure that those learning experiences are taken in consideration for your next project. You're gonna make it better. You learn to listen, learn to take your own mistakes or to accept your own mistakes. The companies, any companies, the most successful companies are full of failures as well. So we just need to know and understand how to fail and get back on and get better for the next time. So that's the thing. So just make sure that you take it and really learn from it and be better next time. Yeah.
Do we have another question?
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Vanessa Montero from Bank of America. Thank you for being here. For us working moms, kids are our greatest blessing, but in corporate America, they can also be our greatest challenge as far as trying to balance everything. I believe all of you mentioned that you're working moms, very ambitious, very career-oriented. You also mentioned that you've made some sacrifices. Can you talk a little bit about the sacrifices that you've made and how it could have perhaps impacted, balancing that personal life with your professional life? Thank you.
No, go ahead, Fabio.
Yeah. So I have 3 boys. So they're like yours, all 16, 14, and 11 at its max. So there's been so many moments that I have missed. And I travel so much and I do so much in my working hours, but I have been able to compensate it by being there. I know it's a cliche that we say quality over quantity. I really apply that, and I want to make sure that as they get older and older, and I remember the times when I used to have the nanny at home and don't give him a bath until I'm there, no? And I was just so stressed in the LA traffic to get me there, and then suddenly I arrive and he's asleep, no? But I don't regret, because I've been trying, and I always say, like, I don't give myself so much credit because I've been trying to make a balance for. My husband helps me a lot, but you create a support system, and I involve them as much as I can on my work as well. They go to events, they go sometimes to meetings when I speak. If they were here, I would have them in the back, because I need them to understand every step of the way with me. They're in my journey, and I tell them a lot. how they need to drink this brand versus the other, or wear this brand versus the other. It's just because they're part of the system, right? They're part of that support system that we created, my husband and I, for them. So now they understand a little bit better at their ages that, yeah, mommy needs to travel, and I do FaceTime, and I missed like their race last Friday because I just arrived from Miami. But trying to make sure that you balance and you involve them, at least on my side, as much as we can on what we do.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add to that, my husband and I have a blended family of 7 children. We have 4 boys and 3 girls. And so I'll focus on the girls because they were the ones that, as my husband would say, were more high maintenance when they were growing up. They're all grown, by the way. My daughters are 33, 32, and 31. But just like Fabi said, I think that the sacrifice that you're making is obviously the time away from them. But we always had this practice on Sunday nights. We ate together as a family, and then I would go around the dinner table saying, okay, Juliana, what do you have this week? Well, Mom, I have a volleyball game on Thursday, but you know what? It's this school, and it's not a big deal. But Friday, you better be there, Mom. Like Friday, okay, fine. I would put it in my calendar. And then, you know, Catherine, what do you have? Maddie, what do you have? And that really helped because I do think the communication you have with your kids on what you're doing and why you're doing it is really important. And, you know, I think back at the times that I would stress as well, you know, trying to be that perfect person. And it was just, I was miserable, they were miserable, everybody was miserable. And now that they're grown women, they look back and they say, yeah, you know, sometimes, you know, it was a bummer, Mom, when you weren't there, but it has made them, in my mind, like successful in what they do. Yeah. My oldest is an entrepreneur. She has a little boy now, 3 years old, and she's expecting a baby. And I feel like she has this great like method of how she's balancing things herself. My middle daughter lives in Denver and is in building management, and my youngest daughter is a doctor. Mm-hmm. So they all like, I think, took away really important pieces of, yes, there has to be balance, but it doesn't mean that I have to give up on my dreams. And I think that's really important. And don't let go of the guilt, by the way.
Yes.
Because you'll drive yourself crazy on that too.
Yeah. I think that's the number one thing. And have some grace with yourself. Also understand that we are in a time now where people are much more understanding. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many meetings, events, you know, that I've taken my children to, mm-hmm. and I'll just call ahead sometime and say, hey, I had a child conflict and he's coming with me, and or they're both coming with me, and people understand, and they make those allowances because they understand, family, and I think it really speaks to your commitment to do both, right? I think we have time for one more question.
One more question.
Yep.
Yes. Over there.
Olivia Zapata with 4. So my question is about problem solving as a Latina. And I think Fabi, in your bio, you say you are a problem solving and an integrator. How does that play into solving those big challenges that you get to deal with in your company?
Well, it's a deep question. I think we deal with problems every day, right? That's the beauty and the curse of a business. Mm-hmm. It's never perfect. And I think it's bring others with you. I think the problem solving for me is not by myself. It's just I really want to make sure that it's not democratic voting or anything like that, but I want to hear the point of view about the problems cross-functionally in my role. I want to hear what everybody has to say about that if it's not something extremely urgent. But I want to take points and different points of view into consideration. That's the part, the integration part that I always consider. If it's something that I need to make a call on myself because it's only me and I can share it, I write down kind of the pros and cons from that problem. I try to make sure that I consider everything if it goes right or wrong, and try to make a good decision for the business and put my heart on it, but take my heart out in terms of really not making decision with my mind if it's a business problem.
Wonderful. I think that's all of our questions for today. I really want to thank Alice and Fabiola for sharing their expertise with us. It's been my honor to be on this stage with you. So let's give them a big round of applause, please. Thank you.